Have you ever stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, the reality we experience, the one we see and feel every day, might not be the whole picture? Today, we're going deep, really deep, into some ideas that could totally shift your perspective. We're talking about mind, memory, and even the multiverse, all through the lens of Deepak Chopra's thoughts on mind, memory, and the multiverse. What is reality?
What always gets me about Chopra is how he fearlessly tackles these big questions, the ones that have puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries, and he does it in a way that invites us to explore these ideas with him, not just accept them blindly.
That's so true, and that's precisely what we're aiming for in this deep dive. We want to break down some of the most intriguing points from Chopra's discussion, making these complex concepts accessible and hopefully sparking those aha moments for you.
Right, we're going to journey from the inner workings of our minds to the vastness of the cosmos, all guided by Chopra's unique insights.
So buckle up, because we're about to question everything we think we know about reality.
Chopra starts off strong, with a statement that sounds like a paradox. The infinite is present in every finite experience. Now, how can something infinite exist within something finite? It's a real head-scratcher.
It definitely makes you pause and think. And he goes on to argue that the best way to truly grasp this reality isn't through the usual paths of religion, philosophy, or even science, but through something much more direct, something we all have access to: experience.
That's a radical departure from how we usually seek understanding, isn't it? We tend to look outside ourselves for answers, to authorities or systems of thought, but Chopra's saying look within, to your own experience.
So how do we even begin to tap into this direct experience?
He lays out two key steps. The first is to let go, to release every single concept, every perception, every belief we've accumulated about reality. It's like hitting the reset button on our understanding of the world.
Wow, that sounds like a tall order. To just let go of everything we think we know. It's almost like unlearning everything.
It's definitely a challenge, but the rewards are huge. So once we've cleared the slate, the second step is to embrace presence, to be fully here in this moment without judgment or overthinking. And from this state of pure presence, Chopra says, arises pure consciousness, which he considers to be our fundamental self, the core of who we truly are.
Now, when he uses the term consciousness, he's not talking about our everyday awareness, right? It's something deeper, more expansive. How does he define it?
His definition is pretty mind-blowing. He describes consciousness as formless, without boundaries, infinite beyond space and time, irreducible to anything simpler. And ultimately, while being the foundation for any understanding, it's something we can't fully grasp with our ordinary minds. It's the underlying awareness that makes everything possible.
Incomprehensible, yet essential for comprehension. That's quite a paradox. But then he throws out this really thought-provoking idea. He claims that anything we can perceive, anything we can even imagine, including our own bodies and the world around us, isn't ultimately real in his sense of the word. Why would he say that?
The key here is understanding how he defines real. Because consciousness is formless and infinite, the specific forms we perceive, like our bodies or the things around us, are considered temporary expressions within consciousness, not the ultimate reality itself. They're like waves on the ocean of consciousness, constantly changing, appearing, and disappearing.
So the path to self-realization, to understanding who we truly are, isn't about gaining new knowledge or reaching some heightened state, but about recognizing something that's already present, something that's always been there beneath all the layers of perception.
Exactly. It's a process of peeling back the layers of illusion, the obstacles that prevent us from seeing our true nature as this pure consciousness. And this brings us to his discussion of the 5 kleshas, which he describes as afflictions or obstacles that cloud our vision.
Okay, the 5 kleshas. What exactly are they, and how do they keep us from seeing this deeper reality?
Well, the first klesha, according to Chopra, is a fundamental misunderstanding. It's not knowing the difference between this perceived temporary reality and the underlying ultimate reality. It's mistaking the illusion for the real deal. He calls this ignorance, and it's like the root of all the other afflictions.
It makes sense that if you start with a flawed understanding of reality, everything else will be distorted. What about the second klesha?
The second one is grasping and clinging to experiences that are constantly changing, experiences we can't hold on to forever. Chopra uses a powerful analogy. It's like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. Eventually, you'll be forced to exhale.
Or like trying to hold on to a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers.
Right. Or imagine going to a restaurant and just staring at the menu, reading and rereading it, obsessing over the descriptions, but never actually tasting the food. You're fixated on a representation of the experience instead of the experience itself.
That's such a great analogy. It's like scrolling endlessly through social media, looking for the next dopamine hit, but never really satisfying that deeper hunger. What's the third klesha?
The third is recoiling from impermanence. We have this natural tendency to resist change,
Oh,
to want things to stay the same, even though change is the only constant in the universe. We cling to the familiar even when it's no longer serving us.
so it's our resistance to change, to things ending, to things being different that holds us back. What's the fourth one?
The fourth klesha is confusing our true self with what Chopra playfully calls the selfie. It's identifying with our ego mind, our personality, our physical form, our roles in life. It's clinging to the illusion of being a separate, isolated I.
The ego. It seems to be at the root of so much conflict and suffering. And the fifth klesha.
The fifth one is the fear of death. And Chopra emphasizes that these five kleshas are all interconnected. If you can unravel that first one, the fundamental misunderstanding of reality, the others start to lose their grip.
It's like dominoes. Knock over the first one and the rest will follow. So if you can truly grasp that you're not just this limited physical being, but something much vaster and timeless, the fear of death starts to fade.
Precisely. Now, he takes this concept of consciousness even further, suggesting that you, the listener, are not just in consciousness, but are consciousness itself. And it's this consciousness that allows your individual persona and your entire experience of the universe to unfold.
Okay, this is where things start to get really mind-bending. He uses this example of a jar of water to illustrate this point. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. He asks, what is this? You'd probably say, it's a jar of water, right? A simple object. But then he asks, is it primarily a physical object or is it a perception? Because before you can label it an object, you have to perceive it through your senses.
Right. It's not a jar of water until my senses tell me it is.
Exactly. And then comes the big question. Where is that perception happening? Not just in the brain as a neurological process, but within your field of consciousness.
And then he suggests that even this seemingly localized experience, seeing the jar, feeling my own body, is actually being processed outside of space and time as we understand them. That's a huge challenge to our everyday assumptions.
It definitely is. And he acknowledges that this concept is difficult to grasp with our linear cause and effect thinking. But he points to emerging perspectives in science that suggest consciousness might not just be a product of brain activity, but a fundamental aspect of reality, maybe even preceding the physical universe.
So is he suggesting that the neural activity we observe might be the experience within consciousness, not the source of it?
That's exactly what he's proposing.
So science, philosophy, religion, all the ways we try to make sense of the world are actually happening within this broader field of consciousness.
Precisely. Chopra argues that these are all methodologies within consciousness, tools developed by the conscious mind to try and understand its own nature and the nature of its experiences. But no system of thought, no matter how sophisticated, can give us the direct experience of what we truly are. That comes only through direct experience, through transcending thought itself.
He also talks about this concept of the dark night of the soul. What does that mean in the context of shifting our understanding of reality?
The dark night of the soul describes a period of intense questioning and uncertainty where everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world starts to crumble. It can be a very disorienting and even frightening experience.
It sounds like having the rug pulled out from under you.
It can definitely feel that way, but it's often a necessary stage in the process of awakening. Chopra uses a powerful metaphor to illustrate this shift, crossing the event horizon of a black hole. From the outside, an object falling into a black hole seems to slow down infinitely, never quite reaching the center. But from the perspective of the object itself, it's an instantaneous transition, and the very nature of space and time changes drastically.
So are you saying that when we let go of our old beliefs and assumptions about reality, our perception of ourselves and the universe can shift just as radically?
Exactly. It's a shift from identifying as a limited individual existing within a physical body and a separate universe to recognizing that both the body and the universe are experiences arising within the much vaster field of consciousness.
It's like realizing that the container is actually contained within the thing it seemed to be holding.
That's a great way to put it. Chopra also emphasizes how limited our human senses are in perceiving the true nature of reality. We tend to think we see the world as it is, but our senses filter and interpret information in ways that create a very specific and limited view of things.
So we're not seeing reality as it truly is, but rather a version of it constructed by our senses in our brain.
Exactly. He points out how different creatures perceive the world in vastly different ways. A dragonfly with its compound eyes sees a mosaic of images. A chameleon's eyes move independently. A snake senses infrared radiation. A butterfly sees ultraviolet light. A bird navigates using the Earth's magnetic field.
It's fascinating to think about how different the world must appear to these creatures.
It highlights the fact that there's no single objective real world, but rather a multitude of perspectives, each shaped by the perceiver's sensory apparatus and cognitive abilities.
So our perception isn't a literal photographic representation of the world, but a construct, a way of interpreting sensory data.
More so than we typically realize. And this brings us back to the concept of Maya, often translated as illusion.
Maya. How does Chopra define its role in our experience of reality?
He describes Maya as a kind of magical lie, but not in the sense of a deliberate deception. It's more like an inherent aspect of how consciousness operates. It's the illusion of separation, the veil that makes it seem as though we are all distinct, isolated beings.
So it's this illusion of separateness that prevents us from seeing our interconnectedness, our unity with everything else.
That's the idea. Maya allows the one underlying consciousness to experience itself in an infinite variety of ways, through all these seemingly individual beings. Chopra uses a beautiful analogy. Think of the different cells in your body: a skin cell, a nerve cell, a muscle cell. They appear distinct and have different functions, but they all originated from a single fertilized cell and are part of one integrated organism.
So are you saying that we as individuals are like those different cells, seemingly separate but ultimately expressions of one unified consciousness?
Exactly. And that leads us back to the question of how we can start to see through this illusion, to awaken to our true interconnected nature.
Chopra emphasizes those two key steps again, right? Letting go of our preconceived notions and cultivating presence.
Yes, letting go of our attachment to specific concepts and perceptions and fully embracing the immediacy of the present moment.
And he suggests that in that state of pure presence, the awareness of the infinite, what some might call God or ultimate reality, becomes unavoidable.
Precisely. He argues that the infinite isn't something separate that we need to seek out. It's inherently present within every finite experience. The symbols and stories we create, gods and goddesses, religious narratives, are all attempts to grasp this incomprehensible underlying infinity.
He even addresses the phenomena of commodified spirituality, which is so prevalent these days. What's his take on that?
He offers a rather pragmatic perspective. While acknowledging that the commercialization of spirituality might not lead to profound awakening, he suggests it could be seen as a less harmful form of commodification compared to things like violence or addiction. It might offer a degree of comfort or solace until individuals are ready to explore deeper truths.
That's an interesting way to look at it. And he ends this line of thought with a powerful quote, doesn't he?
Yes, he references the ancient Vedantic saying, neti neti, which means not this, not this. The idea is that by systematically negating everything that is not the ultimate reality, by stripping away all concepts and limitations, you eventually arrive at the source of all ideas, the unnameable truth.
Now let's shift gears a bit and delve into another fascinating aspect of Chopra's discussion: memory. He challenges the traditional view that memories are simply stored as physical traces in the brain.
He asks us to consider our own experience. Think about what you had for dinner last night. You can probably recall the details if you focus on it. But where was that information just moments ago before you consciously retrieved it? Was it just sitting there in some dormant neural network waiting to be accessed?
It doesn't feel like just opening a file on a computer. There's a sense of actively reconstructing the experience.
Exactly. And Chopra proposes a radical idea. He suggests that memories might not be stored in the brain at all, at least not in the way we typically think. Instead, he offers the concept of a superposition of possibilities existing within pure consciousness as the underlying repository of all information, all potential experiences.
So our memories aren't physical records, but rather possibilities within this field of consciousness that we access and bring into awareness.
That's the idea. He suggests that the act of remembering or even imagining is like tapping into this source of all experience, consciousness itself.
That ties back to his view of what happens after death, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. His statement, "You never left home," implies that the consciousness, that is the ground of your being, the source of all your experiences, continues to exist.
It's a comforting thought in a way. He also introduces the concepts of samskara and karma in relation to memory.
Samskara can be understood as a seed of memory, an imprint left by past experiences that shapes our perceptions and actions. And karma, in this context, is the interpretation and the consequences that arise from those experiences and the samskaras they create.
So our past experiences create these imprints, these samskaras, that influence how we perceive and interact with the world, And the consequences of those interactions are what we call karma.
Precisely. And all of this, Chopra suggests, occurs as fluctuations within the field of consciousness. When these fluctuations subside, what remains is pure, undifferentiated consciousness.
It's fascinating to think of our individual lives as these ripples and waves on the surface of an infinite ocean of consciousness. Now, it's interesting to consider Chopra's own journey and come into these understandings. He didn't always hold these views, did he?
No, he didn't. He openly talks about his background in conventional medicine, his time at Harvard, his focus on neuroscience. He initially held a materialistic view of the world, even researching the molecules of emotion. It was his encounter with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi that sparked a profound shift in his perspective.
There must have been a life-altering experience.
He describes it as moving from one entire framework of understanding to another, recognizing that many of his previous assumptions about reality were, in a sense, a kind of ingrained superstition. His understanding of consciousness and the concept of non-locality, the idea that consciousness isn't bound by space and time, continued to evolve.
Non-locality, that's a big one.
Yeah.
How does he see that playing out in our lives?
He suggests that experiencing a lack of synchronicity in your life, those moments when things just don't seem to flow, could be an indication of a disconnection from this non-local, unified being.
It's like we're out of sync with the underlying rhythm of the universe.
That's a good way to put it. He also talks about the difference between linear and non-linear time.
Okay, linear versus non-linear time. How does that relate to consciousness?
Our everyday experience of time is linear, one moment following another in a predictable sequence. But in the realm of consciousness, especially when we move beyond the limitations of the ego mind, time can be experienced in a nonlinear way, where past, present, and future are more fluid and interconnected.
So it's like our perception of time as a straight line is just another limitation of our ordinary consciousness.
Exactly. And he even links this to activity in the brain's default mode network, which he describes as the neural correlate of the egoic narrative self. Reduced activity in this network, often seen during deep meditation or near-death experiences, can lead to these altered perceptions of time.
So if the brain isn't the source of consciousness, what is its role?
He uses the analogy of reading a book. The book itself is just ink on paper, a symbolic representation, but it can evoke powerful emotions and create vivid experiences in the reader's mind. Similarly, he suggests that the brain, as a complex symbolic representation of reality, can facilitate the experience of reality without being the ultimate source of that reality.
It's like the brain is a receiver, tuning into the frequency of consciousness and translating those signals into our experience of the world.
That's a good analogy. Now, how do Chopra's views align with modern scientific discoveries, particularly in fields like quantum mechanics? There seem to be some interesting parallels.
Right. Quantum mechanics is full of mind-bending ideas that challenge our classical understanding of reality.
He discusses the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which emphasizes the role of the observer in shaping reality. And he also touches on the many worlds or multiverse theory, which proposes the existence of countless parallel universes.
Infinite universes. That's a concept that can really stretch the imagination.
It certainly does, but Chopra points out a key distinction between this scientific view of physically real universes and the Vedantic and Buddhist perspective of infinite dreamscapes or lokas existing within consciousness.
So are you saying these infinite universes are more like different possibilities or potential realities within the larger field of consciousness?
That's a closer approximation of the Eastern philosophical perspective. Chopra sums it up with this intriguing equation: 0, 1 equals infinity. The idea is that from a state of pure nothingness, the potential for everything arises, leading to an infinite array of possibilities, all contained within that fundamental unity.
0 equals infinity. That's a profound concept to ponder. Now, for someone listening who might be struggling with suffering or grief, how can this perspective offer any comfort or understanding?
Chopra suggests that from the vantage point of consciousness as an infinite field of potential, even experiences of suffering can be seen as opportunities for growth and understanding. He believes that much of our suffering stems from clinging to the illusion of a separate self and from unresolved past traumas.
He connects this back to the teachings of Buddha, doesn't he?
He does. He highlights Buddha's core principles. The understanding that there's no permanent separate self, the recognition that everything in the conditioned world is impermanent, and the concept of nirvana as the ultimate reality beyond suffering.
So by letting go of the illusion of a separate self and accepting the impermanence of all things, we can potentially find liberation from suffering.
That's the path that Buddha taught, and it aligns with Chopra's perspective as well.
All of this is incredibly insightful. What practical steps can someone take to explore these ideas further in their own life?
Chopra jokingly suggests seeking out Deepak S. for guidance, a clear reference to his own teachings. He also recommends exploring these questions through large language models, but with caution, noting that AI may have an inherent bias towards a materialistic worldview. He also shares elements of his own daily practice, which includes the 8 limbs of yoga, meditation, yogic dreaming, yoga nidra, and contemplation of death.
Quite a range of practices. And what does he emphasize as the ultimate goal or guiding principle?
He stresses the importance of cultivating joy as a guiding principle in life and on the spiritual path.
Joy as the compass. I love that. He also addresses the current state of humanity, our rapid technological advancements, and how they might be outpacing our inner development.
He observes that our technological capabilities have far surpassed our emotional maturity and spiritual wisdom. This creates a potentially dangerous situation, what he calls medieval minds with modern capacities. He sees technology as a powerful tool with the potential for both great good and great harm, depending on the consciousness that guides its use.
So the key is to develop our inner wisdom alongside our technological advancements. What possibilities does he see for the future of humanity?
He presents 2 potential scenarios. One is the evolution of humans into metahumans with enhanced abilities and understanding. The other, more sobering possibility is that the mystery of existence might deem the human experiment a failure if we don't evolve our consciousness. He also raises questions about artificial intelligence. Can AI achieve genuine awareness and consciousness in the way that biological beings experience it?
And what's his take on that?
He believes that AI, lacking a biological body and the experiences that come with it, will never truly experience subjectivity, things like hunger, sexuality, the fear of death. He emphasizes that only consciousness is truly conscious. Humans and animals are expressions of that consciousness.
It sounds like Chopra himself has reached a place of deep peace and acceptance.
He says he no longer grapples with the big questions in the same way. He sees the world as a kind of projection, a playful manifestation of consciousness, what he calls Maya and Leela. He emphasizes the importance of contrast in experience, the idea that light can't be understood without darkness, joy without sorrow. And he defines success simply as joy.
A beautiful definition of success. And what's his final message to us?
Take it easy. He shares a story about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's definition of stress as resistance to existence, and encourages us to align with the natural flow of life.
Wise words indeed. Well, this has been an incredible journey exploring Deepak Chopra's fascinating perspective on mind, memory, and the nature of reality. What's a key takeaway that resonates with you?
For me, it's the idea that the reality we perceive, the one we take for granted, might actually be a magical lie, a beautiful illusion unfolding within the vastness of consciousness.
That's a powerful thought. It makes you wonder, if everything we experience is a kind of dreamscape, how does understanding that shift our moment-to-moment experience of life?
That's a question worth pondering. If you're intrigued by these ideas, we encourage you to explore Deepak Chopra's work further or dive into other resources on consciousness. It's a journey of self-discovery that can be both challenging and profoundly rewarding.
And on that note, we conclude our deep dive, leaving you with a condensed yet comprehensive look at some truly mind-expanding ideas. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep expanding your understanding of reality.